Good evening, everyone. Tell me, can we still trust the money counters? And Nana, how about the bean counters? Now, leading scholars and academics have, upon grave reflection over time, awarded the accounting profession a very lofty role in our society. Evidence of this, among others, is the esteem that we hold them in and the monetary remuneration that so often accrues to accountants. Hello, Nana, how are you?
Yes, but not all is well between society, the economy, and accountants right now. Accounting TANS is essentially concerned with collecting, analyzing, and communicating commercial and economic information in a formulaic and officially proclaimed way.
Yes, Nana. An accounting academic by the name of Professor Morgan uses the image of accounting as a historical record to demonstrate accounting as an extension of a business owner's personal memory. However, society and business practices have changed. The growth of global business and the emergence of new sectors such as e-commerce have led to complex transactions being undertaken, often eclipsing traditional accounting. This, in turn, has unearthed problems of subjectivity and inconsistency in the application of traditional accounting techniques.
Before we go there, let us consider the accounting profession more holistically. It is important to take a societal point of view of this profession. It is important to look at the accounting professional from the point of view of society and from the point of view of all citizens who are economically active. We trust accountants and the accounting information that they provide to the public to make our own decisions about whether to invest in particular institutions or companies or not. We rely on it to make generalizations about whether our economy is investable or not. They vouch for our books as a people and as an economy. They tell external or foreign investors whether we're commercially trustworthy or not and whether our economy is soundly run or not. This then makes them extremely powerful, potent and influential.
Indeed, Nana, it is important to underscore the role that accountants play as trust-bearing stewards of our national resources. In a democracy, accountants are part of an ecosystem that is sometimes called the guardians of governance. But we have to ask, what happens when the guardians of our trust fail? Without investment, the economy will not develop and grow. Accountants vouch and give a seal of approval for our books throughout the economy, doing investment appraisals that facilitate investment and mitigate risks. Further, accountants help us to judiciously manage resources and to be prudent, and they identify cost savings for us. They are also supposed to help us fight fraud, malfeasance, and commercial wrongdoing.
Thandeka, you're either deaf or you have been living under a rock. What of Steinhoff? What of African Bank? What of Tongard? What of all the KPMG and Deloitte scandals? Where were they? Were they sitting there, fiddling while Rome burned? Counting what? Beans? Accounting for what? If they were releasing fraudulent accounts on the unsuspecting public, what does this say, Thandeka, about the potency and influence of this once revered profession?
Woo, Nana, please do not shout at me so much. I understand the public is somewhat mystified and enraged, as I am aware that the stewardship role that our accountants were supposed to play in our economy is severely compromised, but not all is lost. Let us take a look at this timeline of accounting scandals prepared by our colleague Kudu Tseke.
Some of the recent biggest corporate hires have involved chartered accountants accused of misconduct and misuse of power. Accounting bodies have been accused of dropping the ball and taking too long to act against their errand members. Some of the companies that were fingered for accounting irregularities include Steinhoff, VBS Mutual Bank, and KPMG. At Steinhoff, accounting irregularities exposed the corruption of senior management, leading to the resignation of CEO Marcus Jooste. The company was hit with one blow after another since the beginning of 2018, plummeting share prices, the closure of its retailers, class action lawsuits, and investigations from regulators.
I was not aware of any accounting irregularity, what they refer to in the books of Steinhoff. In terms of the biggest corporate scandal, the biggest corporate failure in South Africa, yes.
Meanwhile, at VBS Mutual Bank, the bank was placed under curatorship after rampant looting by senior executives, leading to a liquidity crisis. The bank was liquidated after an application by the Prudential Authority of the South African Reserve Bank. It was reported that about 2 billion rands was looted from the bank. Meanwhile, KPMG has experienced a domino effect since its 2017 scandal, which revealed that the company had delayed to identify inaccuracies in the auditing work done for Gupta-owned companies, as well as its involvement in the now defunct VBS Mutual Bank. Last year, 265 SAICA members found themselves facing disciplinary action due to accounting irregularities. This tainted the reputation of the profession.
The chances of people being dishonest or unethical raises with a few major conditions: the ability to rationalize it, watching others behave dishonestly, seeing others benefit from it, which is a big one in South Africa, and a culture that provides dishonest examples.
Let us hold it for now, because after this we will be joined by guests who will help us clarify what is wrong and what to do about it.
Now, welcome back. I am now joined in studio by Professor Ahmed Mohamed Ali Haji, who is the head of financial accounting at the University of Johannesburg, and by Bernard Agallis, who is the chief executive officer of the Independent Regulatory Board of Auditors. Welcome, gentlemen. You're most welcome at the SABC.
Thank you.
Good evening.
What went wrong? What happened?
Can I start, Tadeka?
Yes, please.
As you mentioned earlier, the auditing and accounting profession has been very much a revered profession up to now. And what we had to do as an audit regulator was to look at all the root causes for the current situation that the profession finds itself in. That means that we also had to come up with a strategy to see how we can respond to these challenges that we're facing at the moment. The root cause is that the public had lost confidence in the auditing and accounting profession. It, as you mentioned, auditors and accountants are seen as the guardians of governance, and now they have disappointed the public. And what we have to do now as the profession and as the regulator is to restore that confidence. We have to see what we have to do to get the public to trust again the information that is produced by accountants and the auditors that express opinions on that information. So that is what we'll have to change. There are many root causes, and I'll go into that a little bit more later and then see how we responded to those root causes.
What's your take on this, Professor?
Thandeka, we are often asked by parents and learners, is the accounting profession dying? And it's often their perception of the dilemmas, the ethical dilemmas in the profession, which makes them ask that particular question. Typically, what we find is that they look towards other professions, the legal or the medical profession, but we continue to reassure them that this is a phase, and that what we do find is that we have perhaps a couple of small or bad apples as part of a much bigger population of wonderful accountants that are out there, that are serving the public interest, that are doing a great job every single day.
When you every single day, Professor, stand in front of your students, what inside yourself accounts for your continuing faith in the craft and the profession, and indeed a calling to serve in this way?
Yeah, so firstly I think I look at the young people that we have in front of us, and I always say that we're in the business of selling hope, and I look at the young people and I see within them a real desire to to build a society which is much better for all. I see an interest for our accountants to play a role in municipalities, in the public sector, in local, provincial and national government.
Now, our accountants and auditors in municipalities have been through a baptism of fire during the past 10 years. Many of them have been harassed, chased, shot at, they've had death threats and their lives threatened. Let's just talk about that side. What is it about the capture years that accounted for such grave societal ills against accountants?
Both accountants and auditors, but especially auditors, fulfill a public function. It's a public responsibility. They are accountable to the public. And in that sense, we also find that our youth have developed a youth social responsibility. And our profession currently believes that they should protect the public. They understand their role to protect the public. And when other stakeholders are involved in corruption, in fraud, in irregularities, then clearly they wouldn't want those irregularities to be uncovered, and those are probably the measures that they take to prevent these
so basically auditors have been in municipalities and in public organizations doing the forensic work that uncovers the malfeasance and the corruption, and they've been paying the price.
Yes.
But those are the good stewards, wouldn't you say, Professor?
Yeah, absolutely. And we need to keep doing that good work. And we need to make sure that the young people and those people out there and those in the profession have the necessary skills to continue to do what they do best. And those skills speak to concepts such as professional skepticism. And I think for our viewers, you know, we can almost define professional skepticism as looking into the deeps, looking behind the scenes to see what is really going on in those type of transactions and those types of activities. So I think particularly at our university, we're in the business of selling hope. We're in the business of educating our learners critical thinking skills and enabling them to be innovative and function, and I'm also going to say, in the fourth industrial revolution.
Now, we've talked about the good stewards. We'll talk a bit about the bad stewards in a moment, but I just wanted to tell you, Professor, that some of my team members are your former students, and they are accountants and also journalists, which is an interesting nexus to have, but they also see their vocation as a calling. Now let's talk about the bad apples in the profession that have brought the profession into disrepute. Those are the people who overlook malfeasance, and they don't scrub those books forensically. They don't have the necessary professional skepticism to interrogate the books and to account honestly for what is really going on. What is it that they are not doing that they ought to be doing?
So, Tandeka, there's, as I said, there are many root causes for the current situation, but if I can identify two of them. The first is we don't believe that our professionals have a lack of technical competencies. We believe that universities prepare them very well. We have good curricula, and the universities respond to the competencies that's required of these people. The first problem, I think, and I believe, is that it comes to behavioral competencies. It is the behavior of those stewards, of accountants and auditors. First of all, they're not questioning enough. They're too close to their clients, so it comes back. Besides the lack of professional skepticism, they're also not sufficiently independent. And something has also happened to the ethics in our profession. And ethics is sometimes impacted by the fact that professionals start focusing more on the commercial side of their business instead of the ethical side of their business. And so the behavioral competencies is the one area where I believe our profession went wrong. The second big area is the fact that we have fragmented regulation. We only have oversight over auditors. Now, auditors come in right at the end of the financial reporting chain. Before them, as you've seen with some of the big business failures, there are other role players. There are the CFOs, there are audit committees, boards, internal auditors. there's no regulation or oversight over those role players. And the fact that auditors come in right at the end and they are regulated means that if anything goes wrong before that, then there is no consequences for that. And therefore, one of our proposals that we've been working on is to ensure that there is what we refer to as comprehensive regulation of the whole financial reporting chain.
Now, can you both tell me, when conduct is foul and the conduct of accountants and auditors is found to be not expected of people in that profession, is it a problem of national culture towards corruption and accommodating corruption, or is it a question of under-socialization in the institutions in which these accountants and auditors are groomed? Which of the two weighs more heavily?
I would start with the first one, which is really the tone at the top. Our profession, our auditing standards talk about the fact that an audit firm will deliver high quality audits and will produce ethical clerks and employees if the tone at the top is right. So the standards actually require us, our auditors, our partners in the firms, to set the right tone at the top. And if they do that, the culture that will permeate throughout the firm will be an ethical culture and one of quality. So I would support your first proposition, that the tone at the top must be right. It doesn't only apply to the firm, then it has to go back to the tone at the top of the country.
Now, Mr. Gallas, when you've got four big firms that form almost a monopoly, well, in the sense that they're
Yes.
two duopolies,
Yeah.
so they are very dominant, and they have got an unhealthy form of competition, perhaps, where they chase numbers at the expense of doing wholesome audits where you consider ethics, you consider the morality of what you are doing, and you consider national and public interest. Now, when you're chasing numbers, you're going to turn a blind eye to the more broader public interest issues, wouldn't you?
Correct, but it's not only just chasing numbers, it is also the fact that when you dominate an audit market, we don't have 4 auditing firms in South Africa, we have 4 big firms. We have 2,000 auditing firms in South Africa.
Oh.
And when you look at that dominance and that concentration in the market, those firms don't have any incentive to necessarily produce quality, to behave ethically, because they believe that they won't lose their clients because of their dominance. And concentration in the market is a huge issue, not just to South Africa, but globally. And one of the examples globally now is the reviews that's been taking place in the UK, where the Competitions and Markets Authority had stepped in, and they are specifically developing measures to try and break up the big 4 firms, because in any economy, when you have no competition and too much concentration, then you will have to start being concerned about behaviors and
Perverse
quality.
consequences.
Correct.
Now, many of the top listed companies on the JSE have kept auditors for the same set of accountants for many, many years. Isn't it healthier to rotate between different companies so that you have that you break that problem of having too much proximity and too much familiarity between the client and the audit company?
Yes, absolutely. We believe, as I mentioned earlier, that a lot of the problems arise because of the close proximity between the client and the auditor, but also between some of the auditors and the audit committees, some of the CFOs and the audit committees. So there's a lot of independence issues. And when you have audit firms auditing the same company for more than 100 years, even if they say they're independent, the perception is still that they're not independent. And what the RBA had done 2 years ago is we've introduced the mandatory audit firm rotations rule, which forces audit firms or clients to rotate their auditors every 10 years. What that means is that it forces them to have a fresh pair of eyes look at the information. And when you have that, then at least you break up any cozy relationships that might have existed. So rotation is very important.
And on the human capital development side of the profession, how are you preparing accountants and auditors for the digital disruption that is inevitably happening in their profession, And can you describe for us what exactly is happening on this front?
Yeah, so that's the second question we often get asked by parents and learners. Is there going to be a profession with the advance of new technologies such as AI, robotics, blockchain, etc.? And our response to that is that there will certainly be accountants and they still have a role to play, but perhaps the way in which they execute that role will change. So we often get asked, will robots replace accountants? And we use the term called cobots, where accountants and robots will work side by side. Exactly. But we need to make sure that our accountants know and understand the information that goes into those systems and ensures that they also understand the information that comes out of those systems. If we're putting fraudulent data into those systems, data sets, the normative patterns of AI will simply accept that that is the norm, and we need to make sure that someone has oversight and understands the exceptions coming from those sort of things. So our response is that there's certainly a place, and we're ensuring that we're taking our graduates through a process where they experience these new technologies. It obviously starts with understanding the technologies first and then beginning to play a bit with them as well.
How do you teach values? Because the robots will have no ethics, nor will they have values. And in that co-relationship between the robot, the AI, and the human beings, it's the human beings who bring the values, the socializations, the concerns about the public good and society.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have competencies that we drive around personal attributes that aligns together with digital acumen, and we make sure that the behavioral side also comes to play. As I said, we need to expose our students to those technologies, make sure that they have the intelligence to understand the ethical dilemmas attached to the critical thinking, the skepticism, and at the same time also ensure that they can work with teams similar to Nana that we have here, which you've been working
She's
with.
Beautiful, isn't
Absolutely. But they can work alongside experts from other areas, engineers, doctors as well. You mentioned journalists, that they can work alongside a team of people in order to deliver value ultimately to our clients.
So the future is multidisciplinary teams. What would you say to the public? Why is the cleanup of the accounting profession so important to the public?
Right. We have to go back to the role of auditors and accountants. Accountants are the ones that produce the financial information. Auditors give an opinion on that financial information. And in periods like this, when we have, not just in South Africa, but globally, corruption, fraud, misreporting, incorrect information, the public needs to know, and investors need to know, that the information that auditors sign off is reliable. Because auditors sell confidence, accountants sell confidence. And when you have confidence in the market, that will attract investment.
Okay, merchants of hope and confidence, can you just tell me one word as we wrap up? What would you describe in a phrase is the future of accounting, rather?
Critical thinkers.
Critical thinkers. And you, sir?
The behavior of auditors and accountants also has to support the work that they do. Ethical, skeptical, and independent.
Thank you. Ethical, skeptical, and independent. That is where we have to leave it for tonight. Good night.